me. Welcome to the Stave Off Podcast, a part of the Senior Rehab Project. The Stave Off Podcast gives you the information you need to stave off illness and injuries, letting you live a happy life. And now your hosts, Nick and Christina.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Stave Off Podcast. My name's Christina Novak. I'm a physical therapist and current PhD student in healthy aging. I will be one of your co-hosts, and I'm here with my co-host / fiance, Nick Previtt. Hi, Nick.
You're supposed to say lovely fiance.
I'm supposed to just sing your praises. I feel like
exactly.
That's what it's supposed to be.
You can't just say fiance. It's my lovely fiance, like an assistant, like a magic assistant or something.
Does that mean that you're my assistant?
No.
Can I start calling you Madam Secretary?
No, you do.
I do.
You do call me Madam Secretary.
I do, but it's in a very loving and endearing way.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So how has everything been going with you?
Good. Well, it's been a really busy week, surprisingly. Yeah. I thought it would kind of slow down with Christmas coming, but it's picked up quite a bit. It's snowing and windy a lot in Kingston.
So we just moved to Kingston. And we just moved to Kingston off of the lake, off the water. So we're just starting to get used to some of the lake effect winds and snow. So I feel like it almost like cuts through you because it's so cold.
Oh, it's freezing.
Freaking freezing. And our clinic's got a lot of windows. But we digress. So today we decided that we were going to talk to you a little bit about the thyroid. So as people get older, and in a lot of our clients that we see in Kingston, we've had a lot of, especially women.
It's a lot more common in women, especially hypothyroidism, which is what we'll get into later. But
yeah. So exactly. So we are going to talk about, kind of what the thyroid gland is, why it's important, what happens when it's high, what happens when it's low, and what this has to do with weight loss and how we, have to change our expectations to kind of cater to some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess our first question is, what is the thyroid gland?
Yeah. So the thyroid is actually a really small gland, if you could form like a grape with your fingers or something, or even just look at a grape. It's about that size. It almost looks like your liver. It's on the bottom side of your throat, right at the base of your neck.
Does it look like your liver, like the color, you mean?
No, I mean, there's two, like, almost nodules to it.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Livers.
Little tiny
yeah,
nodules.
like it's, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just a really small gland at the bottom, base of your neck.
So if we use the word gland, why do we use that word?
Because it's different than...
Yeah, so it's hormones, right? Like it's...
Yeah, so what it secretes is secretes hormones into your blood.
Yeah, so if we ever talking about a gland, we're always talking about something that will release hormones. And so for the thyroid, it's a gland in our neck. We have two, one on either side, and it releases hormones into the blood.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so did we want to talk a little bit about how it acts? Kind of how did you want to go from here?
So we'll talk about how it acts, how it normally acts, and then there's two conditions that generally go along with it. One is less common than the other. So what your thyroid does is it secretes hormones that regulates your metabolism. So if you have a normal metabolism, you'll have a resting metabolic rate or basal metabolic rate that'll be in a very continuous line with what your body weight is and what your activity level is. And that's how your thyroid is supposed to work.
So if we do more activity, is it one of the things that increases your hormone levels to get it to burn?
So it controls your basal metabolic rate. So it doesn't control, it has nothing to do with if you exercise more, your thyroid isn't going to secrete any more of its hormones.
Okay. So as a refresher, your basal metabolic rate is the amount of calories you burn if you're being a couch potato.
Yes.
And doing literally nothing.
You were to sleep all day.
Sloth day.
Sloth day.
Like when Nick watches football on Sundays.
Great days.
Sloth days.
Great days. But that is how many calories I burnt that day.
Okay, so then what happens to just your thyroid change with age? Like, is it the amount of hormones that change? Like, is anything, when we were talking a little bit about metabolism before?
There's two main causes to it generally that are in almost 99% of the cases. There are cases where these aren't just the causes, but
like for people who have issues with their thyroid.
Yes.
Okay.
So sorry, yes. This is when people have issue with their thyroids, it's for two main reasons. Either they've had some type of radiation injury where they've had a cancer in their neck, brain, or upper shoulders region, which has caused some damage to the thyroid. Mm-hmm. The second one is an autoimmune disease. So this is where your body is actually creating antibodies that are attacking the thyroid.
Right. So that's super interesting because sometimes, hypothyroidism can be really common. And I wouldn't think it's for people that have any of those two conditions.
So that's hypothyroidism is for both of them.
Yeah. But
I'm not even talking about hyperthyroidism.
Right. So usually something will cause hypothyroidism if there's some sort of damage that happens with other radiation
Exactly.
or something like that.
Yep.
So what happens for people who don't have those things? Can there be like low-grade inflammation that happens throughout the body that could slowly start to break down the thyroid gland?
Yep. People who are really gluten intolerant, and we're talking like celiac disease, not just
like not a sensitivity.
Yeah, not a sensitivity. We're talking more of like a celiac disease. They can definitely have inflammatory markers in their body, which creates their which can create a thyroid issue. It's not to the same degree. Mm-hmm. It's significantly less, but it can create a thyroid dysfunction, which makes you feel lethargic. That's why people who have celiac disease or some type of inflammatory marker in their body start to feel lethargic and they don't have a lot of energy, and that's generally why.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to talk a little bit later on about some of the influences of weight on thyroid function? Because I know that there is some links there. Do you want to talk about it now or later?
There is, but there's a really big debate in if that's causation or if that's just correlation in between, meaning that is the thyroid dysfunction causing the weight issues, or is the weight issues causing the thyroid problem?
Okay, so if we go a step back, so we're already talking about the results here. Mm-hmm. With a hypothyroid.
Why don't we describe what hypo and hyperthyroidism is?
Okay.
So hypothyroidism is when your body is your thyroid is not secreting enough hormones.
And what hormones are that?
It's its own hormone.
Yeah, but what are the thyroid hormones?
It's thyroid hormones.
Oh. But there's T3 and T4. So there's two different type of thyroid hormones.
Yes, but they're specific to the thyroid, is what I mean.
Right. Okay,
so if your body isn't secreting enough, your metabolism will drop. But if you are secreting too much, which is called hyperthyroidism, your metabolism will be through the roof, which is pretty uncommon. It doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, it's less common than hypothyroidism.
So
if we have hypothyroidism, what are some of the signs or symptoms that may make us think that we have that?
So one of the first and biggest ones is unexplained weight gain. So if you've continued to keep up with your regular exercise, your diet hasn't changed, but you are for some reason gaining weight, your thyroid could be a link to it. Forgetfulness, slowing of heart rate, and actually intolerance to cold. I know you're cold all the time.
I know, maybe I have something wrong with my thyroid.
I really don't think so.
That's it. I'm dying. And then the feeling of fatigue, I know. Mm-hmm. I had somebody who thought that it was their hair started to fall out, and that may be linked to it. Have you heard of that before?
I've heard. So when I was researching some of this, I've seen that a thyroid issue can actually affect your protein synthesis. I always screw that word up. Synthesis. So that could be part of it.
but you don't
And
really know.
I don't really know, but the person I think I know you're talking about had a lot of other medical
stuff
issues
that
as well.
comes in.
So that one's so hard to pinpoint on one thing.
Yep. Yep.
But so hypothyroidism is very common in women who have gone through menopause, and actually right after giving birth. So there's very similar to like, it kind of goes hand in hand with postpartum. A lot of people who have just had babies, their hormone fluctuation is all over the chart.
Yep.
So they can have temporary thyroid dysfunction. It's generally not a permanent thing. It usually goes away within 6 to 8 weeks.
Yep.
But that's one of the reasons people say after they've had a baby that I feel like I just can't lose that weight.
Yep. And that makes so much sense too, right? Because if you think about the 2 times in a woman's life where they are going to have the biggest, I guess is the better word, biggest fluctuation in hormones is going to be right after they've had a child, or when they stop menstruating and when they start going through that kind of menopausal period.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. So if somebody is having a low thyroid, or if they think they would, so they're starting to have some of these symptoms, which again are, they feel really tired. They're getting kind of forgetful. They're all of a sudden not really good with the colds. They can't handle the cold. And they're just gaining weight and they can't explain why. They can't understand why they're having a hard time taking it off, or they're gaining weight even though some of their patterns haven't changed. What would be the next step to kind of get a diagnosis of hypothyroidism?
Going to talk to your doctor. So there's a really simple screening test you can do. It's just a blood work. It's a really simple test. It's called the TSH test. So basically a test for your T3 and T4 hormones.
Right.
To see how many number per...
it's like the density in the blood or the concentration in the blood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Really simple test. And if you are found to have hypothyroidism, there's also it's very treatable.
Yes. So what would they do? So now you're having the signs and symptoms.
Yep.
You go to your doctor, you get the blood test.
Yep.
Shows that you have low thyroid hormone.
Yep.
Then what would your doctor do?
It's gonna be very dependent on you.
Yep.
Most of the time it is a synthesized version of the T3 and T4 hormone.
Yep, the
synthetic, but it's synthesized.
Yeah, you're right. I guess
exactly.
That's true. Yeah.
Haha. Trying to correct me.
I'm always trying to correct you. Steve.
So it's a synthetic version.
Yep.
Of the T3 and T4 hormones, and it'll be person to person, but most of the time that's it. It's a pretty treatable thing. But the other thing is you are going to be on this pill for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there's anything that has talked about, and I don't even think we know the answer to this, about how diet would affect it. Is if there's anything.
I almost couldn't find anything on exercise and thyroid and diet and thyroid. They all say in combination, they are beneficial.
Yep.
But no one has really looked at that specifically. So going through it, I saw what they've shown is that you can increase your metabolic rate through the day for your exercise. But if you have hypothyroidism, it's not going to affect your basal metabolic rate, which is your resting calories you burn in a day. And that's big because 60% of your day, 60% of your calories is burnt through this everyday movement.
Your basal metabolic rate or your
basal metabolic rate.
Yeah.
So not exercising. That burns the vast majority of your calories.
Okay. So what you're trying, so sorry, I got lost. So what you're trying to say is that what they've been showing with the studies on exercise and thyroid hormone is that the exercise helps to burn more calories because the low thyroid hormone will lower your basal metabolic rate. So it kind of boosts you up.
It does, but only temporary, right? So exercise isn't going to boost your
basal metabolic rate
for the day. It will only boost what you've done for that, say, hour and a half to 2 hours.
Right. So it's not like you're going to like throughout the day, because you exercise in the morning, you're not going to burn more the rest of the day.
Exactly.
Just at that
snippet in time. And that's not a big percentage of your calories.
Yeah, and that's pretty normal with exercise, though. That's the generally the same mechanism, especially if we're doing like a cardio workout. We're going to burn more. We're going to burn 500 extra calories in that time.
Yep.
Our metabolic rate generally tends to go down back to where it was before.
But let's say you have hypothyroidism. Your resting metabolic rate or basal metabolic rate is really low. Say it's 900 calories.
Yeah.
You exercise, you burn 400 calories. Yep. You get to 1,300. Most people are gonna, at a resting rate, burn over 1,300 calories in a day.
Oh, so like it doesn't top you up to a normal person. No, it doesn't top you up to a normal person's.
Yeah.
I don't want to say normal person. That sounds almost bad.
Someone who doesn't have hypothyroidism.
Who has normal thyroid function.
Yes.
That's the better word to use, for sure. Okay, so then let's talk about the weight then. Mm-hmm. So if we have somebody coming in who we know has unmanaged or untreated hypothyroidism, what's kind of the conversation we have around weight?
So the biggest one, they are going to have to see their doctor.
Yeah, and make sure
that's taken care of medically, because without those hormones, you're going to have to run every day for the rest of your life.
Well, that's what we should be doing. Exercise is medicine, sweetie.
But I'm saying they're almost going to have to run.
It's going to make weight loss a lot harder.
A lot more challenging.
Yep.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. And I think that type of conversation is just something that can be really valuable, because we don't want people who are trying to lose weight to be discouraged.
Yeah.
And it can be so discouraging when you're trying to lose weight and you're doing all of this work and you're doing really wonderfully, you're exercising and you're eating well, and the scale just isn't budging. And sometimes I think that, having that conversation and talking with your personal trainer or your nutritionist or your dietitian or your physician, depending on your relationship, would be super beneficial, because they can really help guide you and keep you motivated, because all of those things, even if the scale isn't budging as quickly as you want, are really important things for overall health and making sure that we're, being healthy and living a long, happy life.
Yeah. So it is once you are properly medicated. So it's going to be a little bit of trial and error to start, because they're not going to be able to tell exactly how deficient your thyroid is. So that'll be between, exactly. That'll be between you and your doctor. But so one thing that people have thought is, oh, my thyroid's taken care of. The weight will magically fall off now. No. So now you are just back to a regular metabolic rate. So say you're at 1,300 again. If you're still consuming 1,350 calories, you are still not going to lose any weight. It doesn't matter now that your normal metabolic rate is up, or you feel better, or you feel less fatigued. These are all great things, but the weight isn't going to come off now.
Yeah. So, but the weight would start stabilizing. Like, it wouldn't be increasing.
Yes, exactly. It wouldn't increase anymore.
Right. No. Right. And so let's talk a little bit about the obesity thyroid. So, because I looked into this a lot. Okay. Because it was really interesting to me. Yeah, I'm going to take the heat off you, and I'm going to talk a bit. And so a lot of people have said, oh, I have low thyroid, and that is causing me to be overweight or being obese. And I thought that was a super interesting question, because with the thyroid hormone, anything that affects your hormones is going to have a huge impact on you, because that's a lot how our body is regulated, is through the use of hormones, or in the brain. Those hormones are called neurotransmitters. And so what does that question look like? And so what I saw when I looked at the research is we tend to look at things like cause and causation. Yep. So I have low thyroid, therefore I'm overweight, would be an arrow from low thyroid to weight gain. And what I saw was that arrow doesn't just go in one direction. So the relationship, I think Nick mentioned it a little bit earlier, the relationship just doesn't seem that clear. And that's why I was talking a little bit about the inflammation piece. So I'll come back. I know I'm trying to keep my thoughts from racing in my head. And so I'm trying to explain as well as I can. So with low thyroid hormone, then your basal metabolic rate is lower. And so you may not be aware that your body actually isn't burning as many calories each day as it was before. You don't change your habits.
Yep.
And so you start to gain weight, because when we have a surplus, we gain weight. But what they've also shown is that people who were overweight and obese but had normal thyroid function, over time, the extra weight can actually cause our thyroid to become lower.
Yep.
And so the arrow can actually go in the opposite direction. So we were saying hypothyroidism can cause weight gain, and the direction of the arrow can also go from weight gain to low thyroid function.
It's also
Yeah. And so the way that I was kind of thinking about this in my head, and I think there's still a lot of research to be done, because I think it is becoming a little bit more common, or maybe I'm just seeing it more often because of the kind of the people that come into our facility. But it seems when we think about overweight and obesity, we know that there is a low grade inflammation state that happens with that, with the extra weight that we're carrying. And I think that we're starting to see that some of that low grade inflammation can affect a lot of the things in our body. And from the fact that if you carry more weight around your middle, you have an increased risk of arthritis in your hands, really starts to show that the inflammation in our body can really affect some of our normal processes. And so I think that we're kind of in a really interesting spot, because we're trying to figure out kind of what the effect of weight gain can be. And it, just like anything in science, like it's never clear cut. There's always so many things involved. So I think that classically we used to think that hypothyroidism, like of course radiation in some sort of issue. But I think we're starting to see different things that over time are almost creating like micro traumas that are starting to create issues with the thyroid gland.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing we were talking about with the correlation and causation. What starts where, right? Does your weight gain start and then your thyroid production starts to go down? Because if you think of it, if you start to gain weight, you tend to exercise less. And then it creates a cycle similar to that. So the more weight I gain, the less I move. The more weight I gain, the less I move. Once that starts, your metabolic rate will lower through you doing less. Because you're doing less, your muscles will atrophy a little bit, so you'll lose metabolic rate from there. So it's hard to say at some point, is my thyroid deficient, or am I just losing a lot of my muscle mass? Which is what people tend to think with aging, that I've lost a lot of my muscle, so I don't burn the same amount of calories.
And because the relationships are obviously so muddled, but in the end, I think, does it matter which one caused which? I feel like they're both managing yourself well from a medical perspective as well as from a healthy lifestyle perspective are both really, really important goals. And so if we know that, low thyroid function and weight gain kind of interact with each other, then talking with your physician. See, now I'm starting to mumble. Physician, talking to your doctor about, making sure that your thyroid levels are in the proper range if you think this is you.
Synthesis is a harder word than physician.
You still messed up synthesis.
No, whatever. Synthesize.
He's totally distracting me. But so if you know that these things are related, then going to your doctor, making sure that your thyroid hormone is checked, and that if it is low, that, they're taking the proper steps based on their recommendations. And then also trying to work with, a registered dietitian or someone that you trust to start working on getting into healthier habits.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing we want to reiterate is that this is very treatable. It's one of the more treatable hormone deficiencies in the body because we have found a good substitute for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that exercise and proper diet, once your thyroid deficiencies have been taken care of, will help you lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's not I have a thyroid dysfunction, I'm always going to be overweight. This is very manageable.
Yeah,
it's going to require you to be a little bit more diligent.
Mm-hmm.
It requires the patient taking a little bit more on themselves in terms of ownership of that, I think. But it's definitely treatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think that it's something that speaking with your doctor, making sure that if you are seeking health advice from somebody, making sure that they have the necessary, background and that you can speak with them about some of your thyroid issues and they recognize what that means and things like that. Having those discussions. We've mentioned this in the past, that having discussions with your health care and your health team are going to be really important because that can help you set your goals and kind of get you looking forward. And it's in December, so it's getting really close to January. So of course we're looking at New Year's resolutions and things like that.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. So take home points, thyroid in your neck.
Base of your neck, yeah.
Base of your neck. There's T3 and T4. I'm forgetting which one. One of them is
T3 and T4 hormones.
Hormones, but one of them is more important than the other.
T4.
T4. And so the blood test that you would take is for TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone.
Yep.
Which is the marker in the brain that goes through the blood.
Yep.
That causes you to make the hormone. So it's like it tells you what to do.
Yeah.
And if it's low, then your thyroid levels are low.
Yep.
If you have low thyroid, then your basal metabolic rate.
Yep.
So your calorie burn.
Sloth calorie burn.
Sloth calorie burn is lower. So you may experience unexplained weight gain because unknowing to yourself, your metabolic rate is dropped.
Yep.
It can be treated. After the blood test, you can speak with your doctor and you can go on medications that help to bump it up.
Yep.
And you can still, once you get back up to a normal metabolic rate, weight gain is not impossible.
Yep.
And
weight loss is not impossible.
Yeah, weight gain is always possible, especially around the holidays. Weight loss is not impossible.
Yep.
It just might take a little bit more work and a little bit more time.
Yep.
So being patient with yourself, starting to enjoy the journey of, changing some of your healthy lifestyle habits, getting into different exercise regimens that make you kick butt and take names. And
having a good support system around you is really important for this because, like I said, while it is really treatable, it's not easy.
It can be discouraging.
Yeah.
So just making sure that you're having really open discussions with your fitness, health, and
your family.
And your doctor's team. Yeah, exactly. And, if you need someone to talk to, making sure that you have those outlets.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I really wanted to talk about the blood thing, but that's okay.
We'll talk about it next time.
Yeah.
Preview for a future
it was super
thyroid.
Cool. Why is Christina always cold?
Why is Christina always cold? Do I have a thyroid dysfunction? Stay tuned.
Anyways, everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you can, it'd be great if you give us a 5-star review
on iTunes.
iTunes.
And subscribe. We will put a bunch of our articles on thyroid function into the show notes.
Yep. A little bit of finer points.
Some of our finer points. Yep. So that you guys can have that to use as kind of a reference. You can find that at staveoff.ca/podcast. And that's where we're putting up all of our new episodes. And so we'll be coming live every Monday. And if you have any other questions, just let us know. You can email us at info@staveoff.ca.
If you have any topics, that would be great.
Yeah, so we have about 50 topics that we have. Yeah. But if you have anything that's really pressing you want us to talk about, you want us to research and try and explain in, as simple terms as we can without getting ourselves all muddled and confused, let us know.
Or you more confused.
Me more confused. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks guys for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Hit me. Thank you for listening to the Stave Off podcast. Go to staveoff.ca to check out the show notes and more helpful content and how you can lead a long and happy life.